Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 here on Broadcasting Scotland. My name's Kenny McBride, and joining us this evening are two excellent guests. One, our very regular guest, Sam Paton from the Save Loch Lomond campaign, and another slightly less regular guest, but no less welcome, is the MP for Inverclyde, Ronnie Cowan. And Ronnie, how are you this evening?
I'm very well indeed.
Now, I understand we've only got you for part of the show tonight, so we will just kick on with the stories. But if you at home want to join in with the discussion this evening, you can join us on Twitter. You can follow us at Broadcast Scot, and you can use the hashtag Scotland at 7. So do please join in. We'd love to hear from you. But our first story is our usual coronavirus update. And as of 2 p.m. today in Scotland, there had been a total of 43,309 coronavirus tests concluded. Of these, 34,271 were confirmed negative and 9,038 were positive. 155 patients were in intensive care last night, with 147 of those having tested positive. There were a total of 1,776 people in hospital either confirmed or suspected to have COVID-19. That's an increase of 366 confirmed cases since yesterday. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the COVID-19 infection has risen to 1,062. This number only includes those who have died in hospital having received a positive test for the virus. The latest UK daily figures available show that 18,100 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have died from their illness. A total of 411,192 people have been tested, of which 277,697 were negative and 133,495 were confirmed positive. National Records of Scotland published their weekly statistics today. These showed that as of April 19th, there were a total of 1,616 deaths in Scotland where coronavirus was mentioned on the death certificate. Between the 13th of April and 19th of April, 651 deaths relating to COVID-19 have been registered, up from 610 deaths in the previous week. To place these numbers in context, the total number of deaths registered in Scotland from the 13th to the 19th of April was 1,911, nearly 80% higher than the average number of deaths registered in the same week over the last 5 years. Of these 844 excess deaths, 3/4 were deaths where COVID-19 was the underlying cause of death. A third of all registered deaths involving COVID-19 occurred in care homes. 56% of registered deaths were in hospitals, and 10% were at home or in non-institutional settings. Almost 3/4 of all deaths related to COVID-19 were in people aged 75 or older. 55% were male and 45% were female. And we do have an update on publication of these statistics as well. The Scottish Government will publish additional information on coronavirus from today, including the number of suspected cases in adult care homes. The Scottish Government currently publishes a range of information daily on testing, which we reported a moment ago. The data also includes breakdowns by Health Board and other useful information. National Records of Scotland also publishes a report every Wednesday with a more complete picture of the previous week, allowing for a lag in data collection. But from today, the Scottish Government will also daily publish a time series going back to the start of the pandemic of the daily deaths recorded with a positive test, a time series of the data that's available by Health Board, the total number of hospital discharges on COVID-19 patients in Scotland, the daily and cumulative number of suspected cases reported by care homes, the number of care homes with a current suspected case, and the proportion of adult care homes affected, the cumulative number of adult care homes that have been reported that have reported more than one case of suspected COVID-19. And that information will be available every day at 2 p.m. on the Scottish Government website. So just on these numbers, Ronnie, first of all, what's your feeling about this this new range of statistics that we're hearing about?
Well, I've been calling recently for numbers specific to Inverclyde, so I get the need to gather numbers if we're going to understand the range of the problem and the location of the problem, and therefore where we have to send the resources and we have to gather this information. But it makes pretty grim reading when you're going through it there, you're hearing those numbers, and part of me is thinking, how did we get to this state now? We can't ignore we're there. Massive problem, and yes, we have to address it. But I hear Matt Hancock, Secretary of State for Health, every time he does his address to Camera, he's always very dynamic about it, and he will say, today I want to announce, or I am announcing today, like he's in control of the situation. And he clearly isn't when you see these numbers running away, increasing day on day out, and they've got to such a high level now we've almost got used to it. We're expecting those high numbers day in, day out. I've said before, we got it wrong early, and because of that we've been chasing our tails. What we should have done, we should have got after this virus on day one, we should have contained it, and we should have gone after it hard. Taiwan learned the lesson from the SARS outbreak, and they did that exact thing. New Zealand looked at Taiwan and said, they know what they're doing. So they did the same thing. New Zealand, a population of just under 5 million, 14 people have died because of COVID-19. Yeah. If that was the same effect here per head in the UK, we'd be looking at 200 deaths so far. Every single one would be regrettable, but 200. And currently the number today is what, 18,000, and that doesn't include people in care homes in England and Wales. I just think we got it so wrong, and all the debate now is about the billions of masks we need, all the PPE equipment, and we're throwing stuff at the problem. But we created this problem because we didn't get after it early. We allowed it to go through the population. Whether they say it or not, the UK government from day one went for herd immunity. They threw their hands in horror and said, it's going to go through the population, there's nothing we can do about it, it's just like the flu, and we'll fight it in the ICU units. And that was completely the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, and Sam, just quickly, we have talked on this show a number of times about how the NHS is still open for business. I mean, 80% of the excess deaths are thought to be related to COVID-19, but there are other people dying for reasons that aren't necessarily related to COVID-19. And, we've been trying to urge people to keep going to their doctors if they've got a problem. What are your thoughts about all of this?
As usual, Kenny, I hate this part of the show every night because we're talking about people losing loved ones, and that's what we need to remember. You know, these figures all represent a family member, and I personally absolutely hate this wee bit of the show. My heart goes out to all these families, but in terms of all the additional figures that are coming out, which are welcomed by the Scottish Government, because it lets us see exactly what's going on. But yeah, as you said, we're always urging people to visit their GP, because what seems to be happening is people are thinking if they've got any kind of illnesses and things like that, they're not seeking medical help, or they may be a bit reluctant in seeking medical help because they don't want to put the NHS under any more pressure and any more strain. But that's what our GPs and things are there for. That's what we're out of hours doctor services are there for. And it's very important that if people are feeling ill, just not to do with COVID, but other illnesses, or especially with strokes and things like that, they need to go and seek medical advice, and that is so important that they are doing that. Yeah,
absolutely. That was something that the First Minister spoke about quite a bit at our press conference this afternoon. But we do move on. The SNP has said that new evidence suggesting the UK government has been too slow to act on medical and testing equipment is deeply concerning. Following initial claims by Sir Simon MacDonald that the UK government's failure to take part in the Europe-wide PPE procurement scheme was a political decision, the BBC has reported that sources in Brussels say the UK government had ample opportunity to sign up, but failed to do so. Meanwhile, PPE suppliers in the UK have said millions of pieces of medical equipment, including respirators and masks, have been sent abroad because the UK government failed or was too slow to respond to offers. SNP Shadow Health Secretary Dr Philippa Whitford said Tory ministers must get a grip on PPE provision to ensure people are properly protected and the public can have confidence in the UK government's approach. Commenting on this, Dr Whitford said the Tory government must urgently get a grip on PPE provision to ensure all frontline workers are properly protected. Otherwise, how can staff and the public have confidence in their approach? It's deeply concerning to hear growing evidence that the UK government chose not to take part in the EU procurement process to secure appropriate levels of medical and testing equipment. Whether it was a political decision or an error, The UK government has been far too slow to act, and it simply isn't good enough. And Ronnie, this is basically just echoing what you said a moment ago. What's been your reaction to this, particularly what happened yesterday, where Simon McDonald told a committee that this was a political decision, that ministers had been briefed about it, and then shortly afterwards a letter comes out saying, no, that's not what I meant at all, I misunderstood the question.
Well, it was a pretty straightforward question. So I was watching that particular committee, and it was Tom Tugendhat, who chairs the committee, Conservative MP, and yet he asked him very directly, was this a political decision? And he basically said, yeah, it was. So it was a very straightforward question to misunderstand. Was it a political decision? Do you then sort of put the nuance around that? Was it just sheer blind incompetence at the briefing session when this decision was made? Was there, how many people were in the room? Was there misunderstanding as to what path they're supposed to be going down? Either way, anyway, they got it entirely wrong. And these are the big decisions which have to be made, and we're trusting these people to make on behalf of all the citizens of the United Kingdom, because not to fine a point on it, people's lives are on the line here. So we expect them, whether it's a political decision or not, and I suspect it was. If it wasn't, it was just sheer blind incompetence. Yeah.
And Sam, we've talked again numerous times about the kind of communications coming out of the government. But in this situation where Simon, as Ronnie said, Simon McDonald gave a pretty clear answer to a fairly straightforward question, and then immediately had to roll back on it. We got the journalists were being briefed that he was going to write a letter very shortly to explain how wrong he'd got it. How badly does this damage trust in the government and damage the kind of the public messaging that is needed to get us through the crisis?
It's just last night when I seen it on social media, the fact that this letter had came out, it's just absolutely ludicrous. All it does mean, as you said, it damaged trust. I don't think they can damage trust any more than what they've already done. I mean, all they've done from the beginning is treat this crisis like a joke. As Ronnie says, herd immunity, the way they're just absolutely pathetic. They're not a government, they're not a leadership. You could turn around and say to a couple of kids, right, can you organise that? And they would be able to do a better job. They are just absolutely, honestly, I don't think any of them have got leadership skills or time management skills or actually know how to, manage anything. I mean, I would hate to see, and this is my own personal view. Are they of a case that they're so far out of touch that they don't even know how life works, how real life works? They have put people's lives in danger, and right across the board. I mean, as we keep saying, this virus has no boundaries. They have put people in danger right across the board, and they treated it as a joke. All you had to do was look at the media coming in from the other countries to say, see, this was no joke. And they have treated it, just, take it in the chin, just let it spread through the communities, as if, it's not that important, it's only like a bad flu. I mean, seriously, and this is who people voted for. I just hope to goodness they are held to account when this is finished and over and done with. Because they have put people's lives in danger, and that's my feelings on it, without going too far and using a few swear words in there.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. We do want to keep the show clean at the very least. Moving on though, Ian Blackford MP has challenged the UK government on why they are deliberately leaving millions of people without the financial support they need, and called for the introduction of a universal basic income. In the first ever virtual question during Prime Minister's Questions, the SNP Westminster leader said 34 days after the UK government announced support for businesses and workers, thousands of individuals have found themselves with no income, no support and no end in sight. Speaking from his home on Sky, Mr Blackford said a universal basic income would provide support for everyone, and crucially, it would leave no one behind. Commenting, Ian Blackford MP said, a universal basic income will put cash in people's pockets and it will help ensure a strong economic recovery and fairer society. Over 100 MPs from 7 political parties from across the 4 nations and regions of the UK, have come together to support this solution. Polling shows that 84% of the public now support it too. The UK government must consider this option, which would stave off a deeper economic crisis after the coronavirus lockdown ends. The UK government can and must do more. And Ronnie, this is one of the big reasons we've got you in tonight. You've been a stalwart campaigner for UBI for some time. What do you make of this? What do you tell us a wee bit rather about this letter that came out today, was signed by so many politicians?
Well, I'm delighted that the SNP have swung fully behind me in my campaign for universal basic income. 5 years ago, I was the first person to bring forward a debate at Westminster. I was surprised as I was the first person ever to host a debate on UBI at Westminster. An idea which has been around for hundreds of years. We all know through history books, Richard Nixon almost introduced one in the United States in 1969. So it's been there or thereabouts, and even in more modern times. It's universal basic income is what it says on the tin. It's universal. It's for everybody. There's no means testing. It's for the prince. It's for the pauper. It's basic. It's not going to make you rich. It's not going to make you lazy. It's basic. It will put food on the table and a roof over your head. And it's an income which takes away all the stigma which goes with people living on benefits and welfare or whatever. And the idea behind it is not that it's going to be the panacea. It's not going to cure everybody's ills, all the problems of society. It's a safety net for those at the very bottom of our society to make sure nobody starves and nobody is homeless. But the easy way to administer it is to say every single person gets it, and that way you're not putting in the layers of administration which then add the cost to it. The cost of running our current welfare system is astronomical. And when people are trying to get onto universal credit, and there's the ESAs and the PIP assessments and so on and so forth, and transitioning from one to the other, all that admin costs so much money, and all that money is not going to people who are actually looking for the support in the first place. So UBI as a concept, it isn't. I think some people are jumping on this bandwagon. I was speaking to somebody earlier on, and I said to them, it's like there's this idea that some people wait to see which way the crowd's going, and they run to the front and shout, "Follow me." A few people have done that with UBI, and they don't quite understand what it's all about yet. It is not a temporary thing. It is not just for a recovery period. It is part and parcel of our social security system for everybody over the age of 16 in the United Kingdom. First problem you run into is you need to have a bank account. 1.2 million people in that age bracket don't have a bank account. So there's a problem we have to overcome now. If the UK government said, okay, fine, put one in place, everybody over the age of 16 gets a sum of money. It doesn't matter at this stage how big that sum of money is. What they would be doing was every month, every person would get a sum of money. You basically put in place a UBI. Then what you do is build that up. If we're giving you more here, where's that money coming from? And you can work on it. I do not want to see it as something that we switch off and on when there's a crisis. But what this crisis has done is it's woken up an awful lot of people to understand that they, who had a decent income, maybe 2 incomes come into the house, and thought they were quite solid, they've realised actually we live in a very precarious world.
Yeah.
Incomes can disappear very, very quickly. And once you start to feel you're part of the precariat, then you start to think, well, if I stumble and fall, who's going to catch me? Who's looking after me? What's going to stop me falling through the cracks? And that's the job of UBI.
Yeah. Now we've seen around the world this has become a bigger issue. We've seen countries including Korea, South Korea, Japan, Spain has talked about a version of a basic income. And of course, in the US, Andrew Yang spent all of last year trying to get traction on it. And only after dropping out of the presidential race and facing this virus crisis has he finally started to really turn the tide on it, where to people in the US now there's a lot of talk about it and a lot of celebrities getting behind his campaign. Do you see any hope for this in the UK at the moment? I mean, as you said, this is a cross-party campaign now, but Keir Starmer has said he's not particularly interested, and the Tories have pretty much blanked the idea. Do you see any great hope for it in the immediate future?
I think the UK will probably be one of the toughest nuts to crack. I mean, Emmanuel Macron stood on this ticket as well when he was standing for election 3 years ago, and he seems to have gone quite cold on it. And they've got a version they're talking about. Spain are talking about a version of it again. It's like, I say, it's something people get on board, like, well, that sounds good and it resonates with people. When it actually comes to implementing it, they invent something else and call it a UBI. So around the world, people are looking at it. And Japan's been quite strong on this for some time. But we're running 4 tests, or we're looking to run out 4 pilots in Scotland, North Ayrshire, Fife, Edinburgh and Glasgow. And they've been fully funded by the Scottish Government. What we've got to do is roll out those pilots and make sure we get them right. What the crisis is doing now is maybe giving people more of an appetite for it. So more people from academia and the likes might want to get in, actually poke a stick at this thing and see, what's this about? I've heard about it. And then take it apart, the nuts and bolts of it, and see how we can make it work. Politically, the problem we do have in the United Kingdom is the Tories have pretty much said, we're not interested. They've been consistent in that. For years, they've been consistent saying, we don't think UBI works. But these are the people that gave us universal credit. So do you think these people actually understand a social security system? Because I don't. I don't think they get it at all. I don't think they understand poverty at all. I don't think they live close enough to it to understand it. So if they're not the people we should be asking for this, I'm really disappointed that Keir Starmer has not got behind this. But because there's plenty of Labour MPs do. There are Conservative MPs that do as well, but up until now they've not been prepared to put their head up above the parapet. And when we put this letter together, which was in the Financial Times today, we went around Conservative MPs saying, we know you believe in this, but at this stage in the game and their political party and where it's currently standing, nobody was prepared to stand up and say, I'll put my name to that letter. But I know there are Conservatives that believe in this. It's a strange thing, because it's quite often painted as being a sort of a left-wing socialist philosophy. And there's lots of people in the right, more right-wing, disturbingly, who believe in this as well.
Yeah,
so
well,
it's there, but I really think because of the straight bat that the Tories are playing with every single time, I really think they're quite solid in denying it happening right now.
As you said, I mean, Richard Nixon, who was a Republican, was interested in it. Milton Friedman was the theorist that he was relying on for that, and you know. There is an argument that from a sort of libertarian perspective that it takes away all that means testing and all the government intrusion into people's lives and just says, here's some money, get on with it. We don't want anything more to do with it. Sam, we have obviously talked about UBI a few times on the show before. What do you think about this letter from the various politicians across all parties? I mean, led in large part by the SNP. I think they're the largest group of the largest political party involved in this campaign. What's your thoughts about it? Do you see any hope coming out of it?
First of all, thank you, Ronnie, because it is an amazing idea, and I hope that it gets somewhere. I agree with you. I think UK is going to be tough to crack in terms of the Tories. I would like to see it's going to make a difference in all the MPs getting behind it. It was great to see today. And it's more dignified. That's the thing. Universal credit, there's no dignity there. It is absolutely horrendous. And, you know, UBI is such a more dignified way of looking after people when, you know, if something happens, I mean, because at the moment, even before the crisis, if someone had lost their job or whatever, by the time they applied for a universal credit, you know, that kind of timescale that they need to wait, they've got to ask for an advancement and then that's got to be paid back and so forth. And it's kind of designed to keep people in debt, and that is horrible, absolutely horrible. Whereas if that was already in play, then it gives people a wee bit of, you know, that kind of, as Ronnie says, a safety net. You know, when people are maybe in between jobs or things, and at the moment it would just make such a huge difference to people, because all we've seen with the coronavirus, when we went into lockdown and all the businesses started to furlough people, there were so many people in furlough, there were so many people who were just literally paid off, and they had went from a kind of comfortable income to nothing. So yeah, I would love to see it coming into play in a permanent role, and I hope with the pilot that they're planning it works, and I wish it all success, and I hope more people get behind it. I hope more MPs get behind it, and I hope more public get behind it as well, because it just, from an economic sense, it gives people more money in their pocket to be able to go and spend money in retail and services, which then kind of works money up the system as well, which is
what we call a trickle-up economy. So, Ronnie,
can I say, Kenny, one nice thing about UBI is it doesn't punish people for going out to find work. Right now, you find yourself, people get wrapped up in a social security system, and if they go out to work, then they will lose their benefit, and then they might lose their job, and then they go back down that circle again. UBI does not punish you if you go out there and get work, because you keep your UBI. And the idea that it stops people from going out seeking work, and all the pilots have ever been run, that has been disproven. Every time you run a pilot, it empowers people to take more control over their lives.
Yeah, of course, those of us who have been unemployed for any length of time know it costs money to find a job as well, to buy a clean shirt buy a decent shirt for an interview, get to and from interviews and so on. Yeah. Before you go, Ronnie, I know we don't have you for very long, so I just wanted to get your comments on the next story as well, so we will move on to that now. And the SNP has called on Westminster to seize the opportunity of current adaptations to proceedings to bring the archaic Parliament into the 21st century. Speaking ahead of the first ever PMQs where MPs can ask questions remotely from home, SNP's Deputy Westminster Leader Kirsty Blackman called on the UK Government to reflect on the potential to open up the democratic process. Recent changes made to Commons procedure means MPs have been able to take part in committee and chamber business virtually from home, in line with social distancing measures in place to save lives and protect the NHS. Westminster has long been criticised for its late-night sittings and its lack of flexibility for members with families or caring commitments. SNP Deputy Westminster Leader Kirsty Blackman said, "The first ever virtual PMQs should be a catalyst for real change and provide a moment of significant realisation for the UK Government. The House of Commons has never been keen to endear itself as a parliament set for the 21st century, but these vital changes in light of the coronavirus crisis highlight the opportunity for Westminster to drag itself into the present day. If we want to be able to make political life, elected office or those working behind the scenes accessible for all, we have to lead by example. It's time for Westminster to wake up to the huge potential that these changes unleash and commit to reforming the Commons for good." And in the context of this crisis, we talked about this before the lockdown happened, when Nadine Dorris got a diagnosis of COVID-19. There had just been a vote a few days earlier where you'd all have been huddled in the lobbies, and almost certainly she would have spread the disease further at that point. What do you make of these changes that have been announced, and do you think any of them are sustainable, and how many of them do you think will be sustained?
I noticed today when Jacob Rees-Mogg was talking about this, he was absolutely adamant. His major point was this is only temporary. That's the ruling on this. And while we're doing this, we're trying to run a parliament through some sort of hybrid, which blows my mind. Why it's not all virtual, I don't know. But while we're trying to do this, what we've really got to get in place is some sort of electronic voting system. That's the first thing we've got to get in place. We cannot pass legislation unless we can vote. That's what we do. So an electronic voting system should be the number one thing we're trying to achieve here, and we're not. What we're doing is we're setting up select committees and APPGs where we can all get together on Zoom, or the like us to use Microsoft Teams now, and we can all talk to each other and go through the motions of it. I mean, I said to some folk a few weeks ago that the digital team would never put this together in time. They'd never do it, and I was wrong, because today PMQs followed by a statement by Matt Hancock, and what they managed to achieve was exactly what happens in Westminster, a complete waste of time, and they got it absolutely spot on. I pulled out a question to do. Matt Hancock did a statement, and we did a ballot to see who gets to ask my question. I was one of the people who got pulled out. So, as in Westminster, you've got to be in the chamber. So I'm at 12 o'clock. The statement started at 12:45, so that's 45 minutes I've wasted already. And everybody's got questions doing the same thing. He does his bit. We did about 25 minutes of questions, and that was it finished. And it was something at 2:30, and I hadn't even got to ask my question. So it's very like Westminster. We spend a lot of time sitting and doing absolutely nothing. So they've actually cracked it. But long term, again, it's about appetite. from Jacob Rees-Mogg said today, they've got no appetite for this. They want Westminster to run. Somebody, I think actually it was the Speaker of the House, said just that we're doing things the way we've done this for 700 years, which is absolute nonsense. The way we're doing things maybe goes to the 1920s, maybe the 1940s, but they want this feeling this place is steeped in some sort of rich historical past, and virtual meetings and hybrid parliaments do not tick that box for them. They want us back down there, walking through lobbies, nodding our head and doing things the way they think we've been doing for centuries.
Mm-hmm. And what is it, do you think, that causes that kind of sense of inertia? Why is it that... So, I mean, because this is not just Tories. This has been the same under Labour. They did streamline certain things, but on the whole, very little has changed for a long time. Why is it that Westminster is so resistant to modernisation?
It's the comfort that they can control it. This is what's been done for generations. Literally, their fathers and their grandfathers have been doing this. So there's that control aspect of it. It's very comfortable for them to slip into. It's something they've always been brought up with. I've spoken at the Westminster building last year, 2 years ago now, and I said we should turn the actual Palace of Westminster, or the estate, into like a museum, an art gallery, or whatever you want to be it, and build a brand new, deliberately very modern building. Because working in a very modern building would change your mindset as to how you work. When you're sitting in a Westminster with the wood and the leather and the procedures and the uniform stuff like that, it slows you down. It makes you work at that pace. It makes you work the way they've been doing it for years. If you're a brand new sparkling building with all the modern mod cons, it would make people change their attitude about what they're actually there to do. They maybe wouldn't see themselves as being entrenched in the place. It would be a much more rapid thing. And I think that's one of the reasons they hang on to this Westminster, this faux Gothic building, which the Chamber was rebuilt after the Second World War. It's not that old at all. We built it that way so that we can control it that way, and we'll do things the way we've been doing it for decades, and their mindset longer than that, because that's how their fathers did it, that's how their grandfathers did it, and the Labour Party and the Conservative Party will take turns at governing the country. And if you're not in power, you're in the opposition, and this metronome takes back and forward, and they're happy to see it done that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ronnie, I do appreciate your time tonight. We know you have to go though, so thank you very much for joining us. And if people want to co-sign that letter, where can they go to find it?
Oh, you threw that one at me. I'll let you know. I don't know. It's gone. The letter. There's a.
Well, they can find it on your social media. So where's that?
I don't know. I'll have to find out. I'll get an address. There's a website you can go to. I'll get that website to you.
And what's your Twitter handle? Because I know you tweeted it out earlier.
I'm just at Ronnie Cowan.
At Ronnie Cowan. Brilliant. Well, if people want to sign it, they can always go and drag through your tweets to find it there. So thank you once again, Ronnie. And we
with a link up there. Okay.
Yeah, and we hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Cheers. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Bye. And Sam. Obviously, this Westminster stuff, we do have another wee story here, so I'll go to that first and then I'll come to you to talk about that. And the SNP, again, has welcomed the long overdue introduction of electronic voting in the House of Commons as MPs signed off proposals today. Scotland's longest serving MP called the move one step on the long journey of progress, highlighting the importance of the UK legislature to better reflect the world outside its doors. Pete Wisher MP said, Westminster is finally dragging itself into the present day with electronic voting, a long overdue development that will allow MPs to continue to do their job without putting the wider public at risk. It's absolutely right that MPs follow the same advice that they've been stressing to their constituents, to stay at home to save lives and protect our NHS. And while these plans are currently only in place in line with social distancing measures to tackle the coronavirus crisis, it would be inconceivable for the Commons to roll back on this progress. Politics should be open to all, and electronic voting is only one step on the long journey of progress that should allow those with families and caring responsibilities to play a more active role in our democracy. And as Ronnie was saying, this is an ongoing kind of battle that the SNP has kind of fought quite hard for, especially since their group expanded in Westminster. What did you make of PMQs today, and do you think this is something that Westminster can improve on or keep building on, or do you think as soon as this is over everything will go back to normal?
I'm going to kind of, well, basically, I would quite like to see it being dragged kicking and screaming into the modern era, because it's needed. And we've spoke about all this before so many times. It would allow the MPs to spend more time in with their constituencies, and be able to work with their constituents, which is, as much as what they do down at Parliament is very important, but a lot of that can be done, as was seen today. I mean, as apart from when Ronnie was saying that he ended up, having a big period of time where he, it was like a waste of time because he never got called to ask his question. But I think it's a better, more efficient way of working. It makes a lot of sense. But with the Tories and Labour, it's pretty much, isn't it? You've got to kind of drag them kind of kicking and screaming into the modern era. They seem to be wanting to stick to this old-fashioned kind of backward way of working, which is not fair. I mean, unless you live within a kind of boundary of London and you're able to kind of travel back and forth to your constituency quite easily. For people that live further afield, it is absolutely ludicrous. How are MPs meant to balance, Westminster and, the work at home? And, it's just absolutely crazy to put people under that sort of pressure, especially when we've got the technology there, and especially now when today it proved it can be done. And that's the thing. I think if they do, I would like to see if they do go back, that more MPs will stand up and say, no, we're not willing to go back to the old ways. We want to move forward. We want to use the more modern technology. We want to spend more time in our constituencies. We want to spend more time with our families, because they work hard as it is. A lot of MPs do work hard, and I'm not going to take that away from them. Because you do see quite a lot of MPs working, and they're constantly working, and especially with our MPs down in Westminster. I mean, you're constantly seeing them on social media and things like that, and liaising with their constituents over social media. So, yeah, it would actually be better if they were actually in their areas, so they can actually speak to people face to face rather than always through social media or emails or liaising with their teams and things like that. So yeah, I would like to see that if and when we go back to some sort of normality after this, that more MPs would stand up and say, right, come on, we've now got the technology, we can do it, it's been proved, let's go with it. But one of the interesting things today was seeing that Chris Whitty had said that, it could be we have social distancing measures in place for another year. So it could be that Parliament may get into this kind of way of working, and maybe if we get into this way of working, it becomes a habit, and people are no longer scared. Maybe it's a fear factor of moving into the modern era. I don't know, and maybe people will be more likely to kind of accept that we're kind of moving towards technology, because there's no need for it, and there's no need for all that. The way kind of Westminster is, it's just, it's horrible. It doesn't look very inviting. Do you know what I mean? It looks very,
Yeah, we will keep watching that one, certainly. But at Westminster today, the UK Health Secretary has failed to commit to following Scotland's lead and ensuring all care workers in England get the real living wage in recognition of their contribution to the coronavirus response. That's according to the SNP's Shadow Health Secretary at Westminster. Responding to the UK government's statement on COVID-19, Dr Philippa Whitford urged Matt Hancock to roll out the real living wage to all care workers, as has been the case in Scotland for some years, and reverse the 20% cut to public health funding imposed by the Tories in 2015. In his response, Matt Hancock said that healthcare workers already receive what the Conservative government calls the national living wage, which is lower than the real living wage calculated by the Living Wage Foundation, and did not address Dr Whitford's point on reversing cuts at all. The SNP has consistently called on the UK government to increase NHS spending in England to match per capita spending in Scotland, which would enable Holyrood to increase funding for the Scottish Health Service by over £4 billion by the end of this Parliament. And Sam, this to me kind of goes to something we were talking about earlier, the confusion of messaging that the Tory government does, where they created this thing called the National Living Wage, which is significantly below what the Living Wage Foundation, which has calculated an actual living wage for many years, and more than 10 years now. I can't remember exactly how long, but I know at least that long. And yet they say, oh, but this is the living wage, and it's not. It's what they've created and called a living wage. First of all, what do you make of Philippa Whitford commenting on this, and what do you think about this just general confusion that's created by their kind of use of language?
Welcome Philippa Whitford for bringing this up, because somebody needs to stand up for the carers down in England. I think it's disgusting that they're not getting the real living wage. Especially, it's disgusting at any time that they're not being getting that, and especially disgusting right now. And it's just, words fail me. But then again, it's the Tories. And, this is what they do. They try to, they rewrite the history books. They try to rewrite the rules. We're very aware in Scotland that what the Tories say is the national living wage and what the real living wage is two different things. We're very aware of that. And certainly in my time with campaigning and things with Save Loch Lomond, we've came up with this, against this argument a few times, where Flamingo Land were touting the national living wage, but it was actually the Tory living wage rather than the actual real living wage. And they didn't seem to kind of understand that there is a difference. But that's the Tories again. It's another way of kind of getting out of responsibilities. It's another way of doing things on the cheap and whatever, and it's just another way of taking advantage of people who are doing an amazing job and right now putting their lives at risk. Mm-hmm. And it's disgusting. They need to be bloody ashamed of themselves. But the problem is, these people they don't know what real life is. They probably never experienced real life in terms of poverty, of caring, or, in the care sector and things like that. They've probably, I would like to see how many people in the kind of Tory, people are more welcome to kind of correct me in this, how many of them in the cabinet have actually had a job in the care industry, and done these basic jobs and came from a normal working class family. I don't think any of them have. And that's the problem.
Certainly not.
That clue.
Certainly not many. And, we would also just mention in passing that our good friend Chris McCusker, regular guest on the show, would always want us to mention unpaid carers as well, people who are caring for family members, saving the government, in many cases, thousands of pounds, by caring for, and they are even more underpaid. They're not getting anything close to a living wage, and they're working 24 hours a day in many cases. So another group that are drastically underpaid, and we'd love to see them get a proper living wage as well, which could be done by a form of UBI. We'd love to tie all these stories together. Anyway, moving on. The SNP's shadow transport spokesperson has criticised travel firms for refusing to refund customers who are entitled to their money back as a result of the coronavirus crisis and lockdown measures. Gavin Newlands MP echoed research published by the consumer group Which that highlights many firms are refusing to provide refunds for cancelled trips, breaching their legal obligations. Some are offering alternatives, including vouchers, which could prove worthless if holiday firms run into financial trouble. However, with many people facing financial difficulties as a result of a loss in income or jobs, and with holidays cancelled due to global restrictions, the UK government has been urged to step in and act to prevent customers in the industry from being pushed further into hardship. The Consumer Watchdog has outlined a 10-point plan to tackle the cases being raised and to address the long-term challenges facing the sector. And, we've talked a bit about tourism as well on the show before Sam. What do you make of this this news that some firms are refusing to refund people who've already paid for their holidays that have then had to be cancelled because of the outbreak?
I know a few friends that this has already happened to, where they've had to cancel holidays because of the outbreak, and they have had to basically say cheerio to their money. And it is people who have saved very long and found it very difficult to save these holidays for them and their family. And you know, the thing is it's disgusting, it's shameful, it's just not morally right. And the thing is, what I don't get is, yeah, they're offering these vouchers, but as you said, if the companies can get into financial difficulty, then the vouchers are invalid. How long are the vouchers going to be last valid for? They're going to be valid for 6 months, a year, 2 years, because at the moment we don't know when we're going to be able to travel and go on holidays for abroad and things. So there's a lot of kind of unknown variables there. I don't get why, if they were to refund the people their money, that gives people money to put back. You probably find the majority of people, once they get the money back, would try and keep that money aside. They would do their best to keep that money aside until this kind of blows over, and then maybe rebook a holiday again. But, whereas people, if they are losing their money, then what happens is they're not in a position to resave again because income is drastically down at the moment. So to me, the industry's shooting themselves in the foot by not refunding the money. Maybe that's common sense to me, not some other people, I don't know, but I know fine well that the ones that I've spoke to regarding this, that they said if they could, they would maybe try and kind of put the money aside. I know that's easier said than done when things are tight at the moment. They would put the money aside, or even a huge chunk of it aside, and then that allows them to rebook later on. But there is no way they could resave again, especially in current climate. So to me, there's a bit of kind of shooting themselves in the foot with the industry. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's as you say. There's a big question mark over how long the crisis is going to last, which obviously makes it that much more difficult, both for industry and for customers. But clearly, people deserve their money back. That's the law, and if companies can't pay it, then there's other issues that need to be dealt with there. We do have to move on though, and the SNP's Shadow Chancellor has written to the Financial Conduct Authority, calling on it to step in and hold insurance companies to account as businesses are pushed to the brink due to the coronavirus crisis and a refusal by firms to cover claims. With the FCA previously writing to firms urging them to pay out, many businesses are still warning that insurance companies are not honouring their policies, which are inclusive of pandemic cover, and are threatening their futures. With businesses' claims needing processed, Alison Thewlis MP warned in a letter to the FCA that by the time the insurers respond detailing the reasons for rejecting any claims, it will be too late for some businesses who will have already collapsed. And this is, in some ways, a similar story where insurance companies are saying, oh no, we can't pay out, we're going to kind of hold off, take our time, find some obscure reason why we can't do this. And it's going to end up leaving everyone worse off. What do you make of this story?
It doesn't surprise me with the insurance companies, but I think this has been a kind of story in the background for quite a wee while now, because I know kind of other business people I know and work alongside have all been saying the same from day one, where they were having problems contacting their insurance companies and things to cover them, to see if they could get a payout or they're qualified for a payout at this moment in time, and they just weren't getting anywhere. So it's good to see that this has been taken up, but I don't think they'll budge. I really don't think they'll budge, because once they start paying out, the payments would then kind of snowball, which is not what the insurance companies want. I don't think they'll budge. They should, because at the end of the day, people are paying into these insurance policies for that reason. People are good enough to make the instalments every month or yearly, however they pay it. And insurance companies make a lot of money out of people paying into these policies, whether it's business or personal. And they should be paying out, and they need to be held accountable. But I think they'll dig their heels in. I really think they'll dig their heels in this one, because they're not going to want to pay out the money, because it's not just a few businesses. It's right across the board.
It's virtually every business in the country.
They stand to lose a lot of money, and they don't want to do that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is what insurance exists to do. I mean, insurance, the whole point of insurance is to help you cope with unexpected crises. What do you think the impact will be overall if insurance companies don't pay out, and multiple businesses go under as a result? What do you suppose will happen? Do you imagine the government then stepping in? Do you imagine insurance companies, facing kind of legal action? Do you see any of that kind of thing happening to kind of help restore the balance?
I think, legal action. I mean, you've got the Federation of Small Business, which many small businesses are a member of, and I would imagine that things like these would probably end up taking legal action on behalf of their members. I don't know if they will, because I've not seen anything, but I would imagine there would be some sort of pressure from members to then enforce some sort of legal action. In terms of the government stepping in, I wouldn't count on that one at the moment unless there's any kind of pressure. But I'm sorry, I'm getting a wee visitor here who's decided to come and join in. But no, I think it's just disgusting. At the end of the day, businesses, and the thing is what people don't understand is legally businesses have got to. Sorry, I'm getting asked if he's allowed a chocolate biscuit, so my apologies. Businesses need to have insurance legally. In order to operate, they must have insurance. So businesses are forced to have it. They must have it. It's not something that's optional. So then, if businesses start going under, there's going to be a lot of angry people. So I think that's where the pressure will come in for any kind of legal action. But also as well, what happens afterwards when businesses who haven't managed to survive this, how willing are they going to be in order to pay insurance? How's that going to kind of affect the economy? Because if insurance is a legal thing that they need to have, then and businesses turn around and say, well, we've been paying for X amount of years and the insurance company wouldn't pay out. What then happens then? Will businesses then decide to close down themselves and not to operate? And that's going to have an effect and a knock-on effect on the economy as well, and employment. There's a lot of
issues to unravel.
A lot of things are coming off of this that needs to be thought through. I don't know. I think there would be a lot of questions asked if they refuse to pay out.
Well, we will keep an eye on that story, because clearly that's a real concern for a lot of businesses. But our final story tonight, Swedish activist Greta Thunberg has called today for a combined effort to tackle coronavirus and the climate crisis, saying that the 50th anniversary of Earth Day was the time to choose a new way forward. Thunberg, who was taking part in a streamed event to mark Earth Day today, said action to tackle coronavirus did not mean that the climate crisis had gone away. We need to tackle two crises at once, she said. Whether we like it or not, the world has changed. It looks completely different from how it did a few months ago, and it will probably not look the same again, and we are going to have to choose a new way forward, the teenager said. Coronavirus lockdowns have led to drastic cuts in carbon emissions and some remarkable improvements in air and water quality around the world, and climate activists have said that the crisis, which some have called the Great Pause, should give us all a chance to imagine a different kind of future. With economies around the world shut down, wildlife has returned to city streets, with wolves, deer and kangaroos spotted on normally busy roads. Fish and dolphins have been seen in Venice canals no longer polluted by motorboats, while residents in some Indian cities have reported seeing the Himalayas for the first time in decades. Satellite imagery has shown significant air quality improvements across Europe and Asia, most notably in China. Reductions in air travel, commuting and manufacturing due to the coronavirus crisis are expected to cause around a 6% drop in total carbon emissions for 2020, which would be the biggest annual fall since the Second World War. However, with many politicians keen to do whatever it takes to revive their economies, many activists and scientists fear that climate change may be forced back down the agenda as lockdown measures begin to be lifted. And Sam, we've talked a lot, including the UBI conversation, of course, this idea of hashtag Build Back Better. What do you think about Greta Thunberg's comments and the chances that we can kind of sustain some of these environmental improvements that we've seen during the crisis and obviously go on to improve more?
Yeah, it's given us a chance to reset, really, isn't it? It's given us a chance to rethink what's important and hopefully, kind of change the way we kind of previously worked and kind of. I'm actually quite starting to enjoy the lockdown. I'm a bit of a weirdo on that one, because at night we've been out stargazing, and I live in just along the road. I mean, even though we're on the 82, we're just along the road from Glasgow Airport. And a lot of times when you're kind of you try to go out stargazing, you've got planes and all sorts kind of overhead. And it's been great. The last couple of nights, it's just been amazing. Last night we were out watching the meteors, and it was just great because there wasn't a plane in the sky. We seen a couple of satellites, but there was no planes, and it was just absolutely amazing. And even during the day, at the moment with the blue skies and everything, and you're out there, you're not seeing, the aeroplanes or the kind of trail after one or anything like that. It's actually amazing about how clean the air is. And even living right off the A82, one of the things that we keep kind of commenting on is how the air smells different, which may sound a bit strange, but you're not getting the same amount of pollution. So you're actually being able to pick up the kind of smells, because we've got woodland next to us, we've got the river next to us. So we're picking, all these kind of scents and things like that up. Some are good and some are not. But yeah, and then you're seeing so much more wildlife, birds and things like that. We do get quite a lot of wildlife because we are right next to the river and a woodland, but we are seeing an increase, especially different types of birds and things like that, which is really nice.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm now starting to enjoy the slower pace, without the kind of mad, crazy rat race, and it's quite nice to be able to sit out at night and watch the stars and things, and and just not see aeroplanes or hear aeroplanes. Yeah,
absolutely.
Nice. The only thing we're getting, because we're right next to the river, is if any of the helicopters, because they use the rivers for navigation, especially during the night.
Oh, aye.
So that's the only thing we see, that we hear and see the helicopters going up and down. But apart from that, it's great. It's fantastic. It's dead quiet. It's a lot quieter.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which is quite nice. So I would like to see that it's going to kind of lead on to something more positive and people rethink lifestyles as well.
Yeah, we can only hope.
That happens, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Sam, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure as always. And thank you again to Ronnie Cowan. Such a shame that he had to leave us halfway through the show, but he's a busy man, and having him for half an hour is better than nothing. Thank you for joining us as well. It's always a pleasure to have an audience for these shows, and we'd like to especially thank, yesterday we had a slightly bigger audience than normal, and we did have quite a number of new subscribers following our wee publicity moment from our friends at the Scotsman. So we'd like to thank all of those new subscribers as well. If you're able to become a subscriber yourself, please do go to broadcastingscotland.scot/register. You signing up as a supporter, giving us your £5 a month, makes a huge difference to what we're able to do here at Broadcasting Scotland. And excuse me. If you're not able to support us financially, please don't feel bad about that. We understand absolutely that people are short of cash just now. We've talked about that at length tonight on the show. The shows will always be free to view online, but you can still help us by spreading the word. Please do go to Twitter on Broadcast Scot, or follow us on Facebook. You can then share the shows around. Let people know why you enjoy Broadcasting Scotland, what we do here, why you think it's important, and what you want to let your friends, your family know who we are, where we are, and what we do. That's as big an impact as anybody can make for us just now. And if you want to get involved as well, there's always jobs to be done, whether that's as a journalist writing stories for tonight, or whether it's working behind the camera or in front of the camera. There are lots and lots of jobs to be done here. It's just a case of letting us know that you want to get involved, letting us know either what skills you want to learn, if there's technical things you want to do, if you've always wanted to be in front of the camera, become a star, then we can find a way to do that as well. Or if you have some experience that you'd like to contribute, then that's also great. Just get in touch, let us know what you want to do, and we'll find a space for you. But that is all we've got time for tonight. So I'd like to thank Sam once again. Thanks again to Ronnie, if he's still got half an eye on the programme. Gordon will be back tomorrow at 7 with another Scotland at 7. I'll be back on Friday for a brand new show where we're going to be taking a special look at the oil situation, where obviously there's been a crash in the oil price this week. We'll be talking about oil, the future for that industry, on a special show on Friday. And then I'll be back again on Sunday with the full Scottish. So until then, have a great evening. Good night.